Welcome to Technology in Plain English, where we explain and discuss technology in, well, plain English. In this video, we take a look at the world's most popular microblogging service and its decision to permanently suspend a sitting president's account. But first, let's take a little trip down memory lane, because Twitter, like other social networking services, wound up being something different than what it originally started out as. The original idea for Twitter was pushed by Jack Dorsey back in 2006. At the time, he was an undergraduate student at New York University. The idea was that Twitter would be a public SMS service. SMS stands for Short Messaging Service. It's better known as text messaging. So using Twitter would be like sending a text message to a group of people over the public internet, instead of sending a text message over a cellular phone line, which was the way it had been done prior. What would these messages be about? Well, whatever you were doing at the moment you sent one. In fact, the question, "What are you doing?" is what Twitter was based on. Even the word Twitter itself, and yes, Twitter is a word, is defined as a short burst of inconsequential information, or chirps from birds. So it's not hard to see that Twitter's original intentions were fairly lighthearted. However, that began to change as it became more popular. As the number of Twitter users grew, how those users used the service began to redefine what it was. "What are you doing?" turned into "what's happening?" And it turns out a lot is happening, actually. Twitter is now used to broadcast what's happening by gatherers, protesters, emergency service providers, celebrities, politicians, the media, and presidents, past and present. Which brings us to President Trump. Many public figures use Twitter as an instant notification media outlet to get news, comments, and statements out immediately. However, President Trump, who was never quiet about his disdain for the media and fake news, used Twitter as a way to bypass the media and speak directly to the people. He certainly wasn't shy about using Twitter either, racking up thousands of tweets on a yearly basis. But problems began to arise. Some of the content tweeted and retweeted by President Trump was either controversial, unfounded, or false. Furthermore, those who supported President Trump joined in. Given the president's position as a world leader, some took issue with this, whereas others viewed it as free speech. As public reaction grew, Twitter started to respond. A major step was the banning of political ads, as well as certain tweets that didn't stick to its civic integrity policy, which basically stated that you couldn't use Twitter to manipulate or mislead people when it came to elections or other civic processes. Then came Twitter's boldest step to date, which was the permanent suspension of President Trump's account after the riot at the United States Capitol in Washington, D.C. on January 6, 2021. It's Twitter's view that tweets sent by the president played a role in inciting the violence that took place that day. The president's account was permanently suspended 2 days later. It's important to mention that President Trump is pretty far from the first Twitter user to tweet and retweet controversial, unfounded, and false statements. He's also not the first user to have his account permanently suspended, but he is the first sitting president to have this happen. It's also important to mention that according to Twitter's user policy, permanent suspensions can be appealed, so Trump might get his account back at some point in the future. Which brings us to now, where we have a split. Some say Twitter is overstepping its bounds and violating free speech, while others say the permanent suspension was warranted and prevents further damage and lives lost. But what do you think? Was Twitter right to permanently suspend President Trump's account? Leave a comment below, and join us for the next video where we explain and discuss technology in plain English.